Welcome back to day 2 of the Field Bag Sew-Along. In our previous video, we gave you an overview of the sew-along, talked about the field bag, gave you tips for choosing your fabric, and also ran through the list of supplies you'll need to complete your own bag. Today, we're going to be discussing how to print and assemble your PDF pattern. If you've used PDF patterns, this will all be familiar to you. For those of you out there who haven't worked with a downloadable PDF sewing pattern before, I'll walk you step by step through the process of downloading and assembling the pattern. It can seem difficult the first time you do it, but it's truly an easy and painless process. If you purchased the printed paper pattern of the field bag, you don't need to watch this video unless you want to pick up any tips and tricks you might glean along the way. To start, you're going to need to download the pattern. You can find the link to purchase the PDF pattern in the description below the video. Once you've made your purchase, you'll receive an email containing the links to download your pattern. Click the link in the email to download your pattern. Keep in mind that the patterns will download to wherever your computer is set to save downloads to. In most cases, this is a folder called Downloads, but if you changed it at any point, that's where your file will be saving to. If your pattern opens in a browser window, this is considered a download because your computer is downloading it and the target destination setting is your browser. We don't recommend printing from this page as it can be difficult to get the pattern to print without scaling turned on. Once your pattern is saved onto your computer, you'll want to open it in Adobe Acrobat Reader, which can be downloaded for free on their site. I've also included a link in the description below. Over the years, we've found that Acrobat is the most foolproof way to print patterns at the correct scale, so we highly recommend using it. Once you've opened the pattern in Acrobat, go to File, Print, and the Print dialog box will open. Under Page Sizing and Handling, select Actual Size. This will ensure you're getting the pattern at the correct scale. The pattern is laid out to print on both US letter and A4 paper. We recommend printing just the first page to start to check that you do have everything printing at the correct scale. On the first page is a square that, when printed correctly, should measure 3 by 3 inches, or if you're metric, 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters. If you've got that correct, all you have to do is make sure you've got enough paper in your printer and press print. That's all there is to it. There are a lot of tutorials and methods out there for assembling your print-at-home PDF patterns, but I'm going to show you how I assemble mine here today. If you have a method that works for you, feel free to ignore this section. I know a lot of you are new to PDFs coming from knitting, so I wanted to make sure we covered this in our sew-along. I like to start by grabbing a small cutting mat and an X-Acto knife. I use a different cutting mat than my rotary for this because my paper cutting mat is a bit thicker than my rotary one, and I don't want to destroy my rotary mat with the sharp blade of the X-Acto knife. I also recommend either using a metal ruler or one meant for rotary use, like this thick plastic here, because the X-Acto knife can cut your thinner plastic rulers. So I would not recommend using one of these flimsy 18-inch rulers. If the X-Acto does cut the edge of your thinner ruler, you'll be left with a ruler that doesn't have a truly straight edge, and a ruler without a straight edge is really not useful at all. You can also use scissors to cut off the edges, but I find the knife a bit quicker. It's all up to personal preference and what you have laying around your house. All right, here we have our printed pattern. It is ready to assemble. So all you're going to do is you're going to take your first sheet, get your X-Acto knife ready, and I like to cut off the right edge. Now you can see this might take a while to cut off every page. I think there's 18 pages in the field bag pattern. So what you can do is take a few at a time. If you're not sure where the row ends, you can look for the edge that does not have an arrow. That means it's the end of the line. Or each of our patterns includes a printing instruction and taping key, and this has the full layout of the pattern. So you can see it is 18 pages and it is 3 lines of 6 pages. We also have instructions for printing, which we already went over, but that's all in this file. So you can line up a few at a time. Make sure they're nice and neat. Align your ruler. And you'll probably have to run your X-Acto over that a few times just to make sure you cut through everything. See, we're almost there. And there's the first line. So now for the second row, I'm going to just do 3 at a time. You're going to need to cut off the top edge. And that is so that we can tape it to the bottom of the row above it. So we'll remove that. And then we'll remove the right edge. And you're just going to keep working through the remaining pages in the same fashion. Try to be as exact as you can, but again, if you're not perfectly exact, it's not going to be a problem. Then again, we'll cut off the top. We're making a bag, not a fitted evening gown, so a 32nd of an inch here or there isn't going to make or break things. Oops, just a little piece up there. And then our last 3 pages. These do not want to line up. There we go. Okay, so all of our pieces are now cut and we are ready to assemble. So to assemble our pattern, we're going to need some Scotch tape and a pair of paper scissors. And you'll see why I use the paper scissors in a minute, even though it's already cut out. So I'm going to start with the lowest row. And all I'm going to do is take a small piece of tape. I'm going to align the edges. And I'm just going to place a piece of tape just right in the center on the barrel. Move over to the next one. Tape. And then you can see here that this is one pattern piece. So here on our printing instructions and taping key, this is piece 3 down in the bottom, and there's a page break here. So rather than taping the next piece on, I'm going to keep it separate, because as you tape, we're humans, we're not perfectly exact machines. So we may have cut slightly off, we might be taping slightly off. So the more pieces that you tape together, the more potential there is for the pattern to get slightly off and slightly off. And then by the time you reach the other top corner, it's compounded by 18 sheets. By keeping the pattern pieces taped only to themselves, you cut down on that compounding and you just get a little bit more of an accurate pattern. Also, it's easier to work with the smaller pieces rather than everything taped together. So that's my tip. So I'm going to move over. Tape these together. And piece 13 to 14. Now we'll move on to the second row. So I'm going to scoot this piece 1 out of the way, and we'll just work with piece 3 for a moment. Now I'm just going to align here. And you can see this is the top edge of piece 3. So I'm actually just going to cut that off. And here we have, again, the top edge of piece 3, and this is piece 2. So I'm just going to cut those apart. That way I'm only working with one pattern piece at a time. So simply slide this piece under, get it aligned, tape, align, and tape. Now I like to tape the intersection of these points, as well as any place where the edge of the pattern crosses 2 sheets of paper. Just makes it a little easier to cut and your pattern stays together longer. So again, here at the bottom and over here, and then one last piece of tape over at this edge. So now this is piece 3. It's all put together, so we can set it aside and move on to the next. So we're going to continue. So we're going to continue across row 2 where we left off over here. So these two, we don't need to tape these together because this is a guide for the strap and this is the pocket. It's 2 separate pieces, so we're not going to tape them together. So we'll tape pages 10 and 11. And again, if this seems confusing, all of this is in the taping key in the pattern instructions. So here we have the edge. So we'll continue row 2 along piece 1. slip this under here. And the reason I've only been taping the centers at this point is because if anything gets a little off, it's easy to kind of rotate and you have a little more flexibility if you've only taped the center rather than the entire thing. And then page 7, line it up in both segments. And tape. Okay, so now we'll move on to the first line. So here's our first row, starting from the bottom. Here we have our strap. And this is just a length guide for you. You won't need to cut this out of fabric. You're going to cut it out of whatever you're using for your strap. So if you have a piece of leather, this will be your guide to cut that. If you have cotton webbing that you've purchased, this will be the length. It'll be 1 inch wide already, so you won't need to cut along those lines. So this is taped together, so we can put that in our pile of finished pieces. Next up, we need to finish piece 2, the pocket. So we'll just align page 5 and page 11. Then piece 4. And you can see here I didn't cut off quite all of the border, but I can see underneath that these two meet. So now this piece is done. We're going to secure the center where 4 pages meet, and then make sure all of the edges are taped. And one more down here. Piece 2 is completed, so we can set it aside. And we'll finish up piece 1. So here we go with page 9, attaching to page 3. And our final page 1 will attach to 2 and 7. Now, again, as I mentioned, if anything is slightly off, it's not a big deal. This is a square bag. We're not fitting it to a human. It's going to be just fine. It's almost impossible, being non-machines, to cut everything perfectly and then also tape it together perfectly. If you are someone that this bothers, I would highly recommend either getting a copy shop printout or buying the paper pattern. But that is it. So this is piece 1. Piece 2, piece 3, and our strap, piece 4. In our next video, I'll be walking you through the process of cutting and marking your fabric. We'll be covering both the kits and using your own fabric, so make sure your pattern is assembled, and I'll see you back here for that. And as always, if you have any questions, let us know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to help. And make sure you're subscribed to our channel so you don't miss any of our updates. I'll see you back here next time. Bye-bye.